Welcome to the Pitch of Discontent. Owen back again for another guest episode. Very excited for this one. Joining me in the stew, it's Monica from the Last Martyr. Hello. What's going on?
Nothing much. Just, looking forward to releasing a new EP next week.
I know. We're going to get into all of that. Thank you for coming in person. I know that you're a busy woman. You got a lot of stuff going on, and I appreciate you making time to come in here. We also had a bit of rain beforehand, and I was worried. I was like, oh, I hope she's not caught out in the rain. She's probably making herself look nice. I don't want her to look like a drowned rat or something when she comes in, but you look great. So.
Thank you. No, it was kind enough to stop as soon as I got out of the car, so that's what we want.
That is exactly what we want. Monica, for people who might not be familiar with you and what you do, could you give us a brief introduction about who you are, the band, and why you're on the show today?
Yeah, so I am the vocalist of the Last Martyr, based in Melbourne. We're a heavy band. And we've been around for about 5 years now. Aside from being a musician, I'm also a music journalist, and I've worked for publications such as Knotfest.
Yes.
And so, very much ingrained in the music industry, and I love Australian heavy music.
Yeah, I think I probably became aware of you and your work outside of the band first.
Oh,
I think,
no way.
Yeah, I think I saw your face doing a lot of the Knotfest promo, and I was like, who's this? And then it was only kind of looking into your work and your backstory that I realized that you had a band and you were doing that as well. And I was like, oh shit, there you go. She does have a lot of stuff going on. So
cool.
How do you find juggling the, I guess, being a musician aspect with being a music journalist? Is that an interesting thing to walk?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that actually on the way over, because I used to do a lot more music journalism work than I currently do now. At the moment, most recently worked for Knotfest, but I used to do a lot more in the scene. And I kind of took a little bit of a step back because I found that I was spending a lot of time analyzing music and thinking about the business side of music and social media. I have done a lot of social media management and stuff in the past too. And I felt like that was kind of deterring me from being an artist.
Sucking some of the creative juice up a little bit.
Yeah, I don't get me wrong, I love it, and so grateful for the opportunities, especially with, I mean, come on, it doesn't get much better than Knotfest, I feel
it's huge.
But yeah, it's been an interesting balance having to kind of separate the analytical side from myself as an artist. And I'm at a stage currently at this point in time where I'm trying to think about what being an artist entails for me right now.
Yeah.
And kind of getting back into that mode a little bit.
Super interesting, and I think that will dovetail nicely into a lot of the notes that I have for our conversation, because I feel like we can get into some of the nitty-gritty about that. But I just want to say, to your point about kind of that tension, I'm not a musician myself, I don't perform, but I do feel a similar kind of tension in the fact that I spend so much time listening to music, talking about music for this show, for these people watching. Hello, thank you. But I also enjoy music, and I also listen to music for fun. And sometimes I have to schedule time to just listen to records that I enjoy, not for any analytical purpose, just to kind of enjoy music and remember why I do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I can kind of figure that you're in the same kind of position, being I need to turn that part of my brain off and just be present on stage, creating that sort of art that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think through my work as a journalist, I've had the fortunate opportunity to be in, to go backstage at festivals, and that kind of stuff is normalized for me to some degree, but nothing will ever compare to the moment when you're on stage at performing in front of an audience. Nothing will ever trump that for me. So I'm in a place where just trying to figure out what it means to be just an artist at this
Yeah.
point in time.
Just figuring out who Monica is. I like that.
I mean, it's a constant thing, isn't it?
We like existential questions. That's
Oh,
good.
yeah.
I wanted to start off with a little kind of icebreaker thing. So we've talked about this a couple of times with various guests, but I figure you would be an interesting person to throw this at. How do you describe the Last Martyr to people that you work with outside of music?
Oh
I'm
my
thinking like
gosh.
day job, office job, normie colleagues, whoever. Like if someone hits you up in the kitchen at work and they're like, "Oh, you're in a band. What does it sound like?" What do you say?
Oh no. I get
I know you've been there. I know you've had this.
100%. I literally put up a status actually last week, commenting on this exact thing. Like when you walk into like the lunchroom or something in
Yep.
the office and people are like, "Hey, rock star, how's the band?" Like it's always like spelled like BAAAAAND.
Lots of emphasis, yeah.
And so many comments on that. Yeah, I get very, very self-conscious because obviously I want to hold down a job, and even if it's not like a job that's fulfilling, which nothing is as fulfilling as music, of course.
Sure.
I get like this weird thing where people, especially because I play in a heavy band,
Yeah.
I get this weird thing that people are going to look at me a little differently if they know I'm in a band. So I try and like actually keep it a secret as much as I can.
Has that been very successful?
No, thankfully. So my current employer, my best friend actually got me the job, and she was my supervisor up until about 2 weeks ago. And she is just like my biggest supporter. She is so like, she'll just pump me up like, what an incredible friend. But of course, she's sharing my new videos. Like every time we put out a video, she's sharing it in like the massive group chat with like the whole company. So how I describe it is they're like, "Oh, let us know when you have a gig." I'm like, "Oh, we're kind of like rock metal." And I just kind of like, I just put on like this high pitched voice, like, I don't know if you're into that. And then actually some of my work colleagues did come to a show when we last headlined in Sydney, and they were in the front row. So I don't know, it wasn't as scary as I was building it up to be, but I definitely get very, very awkward.
I find that the umbrella terms of like heavy metal or like hard rock are usually like the go-to choices, because like it saves you from having to kind of like get in the weeds of like subgenre stuff, which those people like don't have any knowledge of it and likely don't care. So like as long as you can signify to them that you're like, it's not really like on the radio necessarily, unless it's like late Triple J racket material probably. But like it's like heavy or like alternative, and that's kind of where you stop, and you're like, if you're into that, cool.
Yeah, I mean, depending on who asks, like I've definitely lied about our genre, before and be like, "Oh yeah, it's just like heavy rock," just because I don't really want to get into it with people that are probably never going to see us anyway.
Exactly.
And I just get like a little bit self-conscious in like that environment.
Totally.
But there's definitely certain workplaces where I have been able to be like more open with it, and that's always cool.
Yeah, sick. So we are here to talk about the band's new EP. It's called Requiem. It's coming out next Wednesday, October 23rd. I will have links in the description for people to pre-order, stream, all of that good stuff. But I wanted to start by talking about something that I saw on the band's social media, specifically on your Instagram, where you talked about the anticipation of releasing the EP and everything that's gone into it. And you talked about being in a particularly low point collectively within the band around this time last year. So I wonder if we could start there. Could you explain to me kind of what you meant in that post and what you guys were feeling as a band, and how did that feed into Requiem?
Yeah, I guess there was a couple of rejections that happened for us about a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, that kind of impacted us a lot more than past rejections. I mean, look, this industry is full of rejections. You have to have a thick skin. And we definitely do. But there's, every so often there's like some rejections where you kind of like expect something, or something comes out of the blue unexpected that you don't see coming, and it kind of like hits you right in the heart, and you're like, oh, damn. So there was a couple of like major sort of points, a couple of major rejections, I guess, at that time last year. And it definitely threw all of us a little bit. Like we weren't expecting it, and we weren't sure how to overcome it. And it came at a time actually where 3 out of the 4 of us had booked overseas trips, and it came at like a really nice time because we could kind of detach for probably the first time ever in this project. Like being in a band, we are messaging each other every single day. We are self-managed, self-booked. Like we don't have a label. Like
I'm sure the group chat is busy,
oh,
popping off all the
it is
time.
busy. Like sometimes, you know, the guys. I work from home and I've worked a lot. You know, I do like computer-based work, so I'm online keeping up with everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you'll come back to the message, like to the chat, and there'll be like 83 missed messages or something. And I feel so sorry when that happens, especially to the other guys. But anyway, we went overseas, we came back, and we actually had booked this writing retreat. So we kind of kidnapped our producer and we hired this house, like Airbnb in the Mornington Peninsula, and with the intention of beginning to write a next body of work.
Okay.
But yeah, coming into that writing process, we had taken some time away from the band, about a month or so, not heaps long, and had come back. And during that week, we really kind of came together as a team and started to write music, and that really boosted our morale and took us from a point of feeling quite hopeless about our future in the music industry to a place of being hopeful again. And yeah, I think that every time I listen back to that EP, it kind of takes me back to this magical time, because we were just talking about day jobs.
Yeah.
And it was a rare moment in time as well where we could focus purely on the music. And I think that that's what every working musician fantasizes about until they get to the point where they're signed or where they're in a place where they're earning money from music.
Yeah, to quote unquote make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the dream, is like when you can do this full time, I guess, and like not have to hold down the soul crushing day job of whatever it might be. That is kind of making it, really, for most people.
I think that's all anyone wants, really. It's like no one really wants to earn millions of dollars from this industry. Everyone just wants music to like pay their rent. So the day that happens,
sign
for
up
me
to the Patreon, please.
Plug.
Okay, so you're feeling hopeful, you guys are re-energized, you've had this period of reflection. What takeaway, what learnings did you have from that, and how did you feed that into Requiem?
I think one of the key takeaways for me personally from overcoming that, and don't get me wrong, we didn't overcome it just in that 1 week. It did take a couple of months to kind of overcome, where we were at, is how much we were able to band together as a team. And even though we've been working together for many years, it's not until going through those rejections that, when one person's feeling low, another person will lift them up, and vice versa. And I feel like during that time, we really came together as a unit, the 4 of us, and that was really, really special. I will remember that, and I think that we're a stronger band for it ultimately.
Particularly in like narrative storytelling and stuff, like the hero's journey, the protagonist has to go through trial and struggle. They have to be at their lowest point to then learn something, overcome it, and then, complete the circle and close up the story and have the happy ending, right? So like, in a way, like, you will be a stronger person and you will be a stronger band by going through some setbacks and being able to kind of collectively reassess like why you're doing this in the first place. And in many ways, like, it could have been an exit ramp for people, right? To be like, well, that was a fun ride, but I'm out. And thankfully that's not what happened. You guys instead bonded together and became stronger to do the material on Requiem, which I think, personally, is your strongest material. I think the songs are fantastic.
Thanks.
I think it's an incredible body of work, and it really represents, for me, like a very cohesive statement about the band in terms of intent and sound, performance. So talk to me about that. When you guys are in this retreat, you're writing, you're devoting all of your creative energy to the band and to this new body of work. What are you trying to put into it? What are you trying to get out of it?
I think at that point it was, okay, who are we as a band? How can we be the most authentic version of ourselves individually and collectively, which is always a challenge because you've got 4 individuals with a certain vision, certain influences coming together. So I think it was, we'd already somewhat found our sound, but this body of work we feel like really represents us, and having the time and space to write it also allowed us to experiment with certain techniques of writing that we'd not explored.
Yeah.
So, for example, there are a couple of songs, The Nihilist and Venus Retrograde, and actually the intro track, Xenox, I'm pretty sure, that started off being written electronics first as opposed to guitars first.
Right, interesting.
So it was like electronics, vocals, and then guitars as like accent, more like an accent rather than the driving force of the song.
Interesting.
And that really worked for us, I feel like.
Yeah.
We've definitely got those more guitar-driven numbers on the EP,
Sure.
and listening to it, you probably may not even like pick up that some songs are more guitar-driven and some songs aren't. But I don't think that we would have experimented with that without having the time and space to do so.
Yeah. I'm interested to know, like, that approach of going electronics first, was that something that came from members of the band, or was that something that your producer kind of threw out there as, a way to kind of like get the creative juices flowing, or to kind of push you out of your comfort zone a little bit?
Yeah, actually both. So Ricky, our bass player, he is he's just such like an EDM guy.
Okay.
And he's also super into like goth music, and he'll be
Sick.
like at all the goth clubs and
Fishnet guy. Love that.
Yeah, 100%. And so he writes all of our electronics, or a lot of our electronics, for the band. And so a lot of it was driven by knowing his skill set and him coming to the table with certain demos and just deciding to
flesh them out more and add to them. Yeah.
But I have to give credit to Chris Lalick, our producer, who was the one that gave us the confidence to do that, because we were there for maybe like 2.5 days, 3 days. And he's like, right, we're starting to like write all these songs that are kind of in the same family. I feel like we need to just like completely switch it up now. And so that it was his sort of suggestion to then go forward and not write guitars until, one of the, I guess, more of the vocals were written.
Yeah, no, and I think like sometimes getting out of your comfort zone and really kind of just throwing stuff at the wall is kind of the best approach, because you can kind of just like luck upon something by accident and you get that spark of being like, oh, that's really good. I need to like lean into that. So have you worked with Chris before?
We have, yes.
Okay.
So we've been working with him since 2019.
Right.
We did a song called Like a Ghost, and that was a very interesting time of the band where we were going through like a lineup change, and then it was right before COVID. And it was another sort of moment where Ben, my guitarist, and I had to decide, okay, we're going to keep the band going.
Yeah.
Because it was just us two at that point. And working with Chris really, again, like just completely reinvigorated us and his ideas. And I'd never worked with a producer before that I guess had so many songwriting skills, I suppose. Like there's a difference between a producer and like just an audio engineer, and a producer works with you to craft arrangements and to like add different sounds and push you out of your comfort zone. And he has definitely pushed us outside of our comfort zone the last few years. So I feel like he really helped us find our sound as well.
Yeah. And again, it's kind of similar to what we were talking about too, with like the rejections and the setbacks, right? Like it is in a very different way, like its own kind of struggle to kind of go through different styles of writing, different styles of creating songs. And that iterative process of kind of just seeing what works usually yields the best material. I'm interested to know, because the EP is 7 tracks, I believe.
Yep.
Was there anything that didn't make the cut? Like, did you guys have a large amount of stuff that you got out of that writer's retreat, or was it pretty much everything was good to go?
Pretty much everything was good to go, if I'm honest. We mainly just worked on refining what we had. There were definitely a ton of demos that didn't make the cut, but once we started like pre-production, pretty much what we the songs that we got like more than 50% or 60% done are what's on the EP.
Yeah.
The intro track, Xenox, that actually we attempted to create into a full track, just was not working. So it ended up going back to a shorter version and using it more as like an intro hype track, which I just think is what it was destined to be. But
it works. Like, it's perfect. And I think like on first listen to the EP, the abruptness of it kind of like finishing kind of like caught me off guard. But then immediately like kicking into the track, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, that's what it's doing. It's meant to like hype you up. It's meant to build up that tension so you get the pop of the first proper track, which I think all good intro tracks should do. And sometimes you can listen to a project and it feels like that stuff is tacked on to just kind of like build out the runtime. But Xenox is doing something very purposeful, I feel. So
yeah. As soon as I heard it, I was just like, I mean, it got me hyped. Like, I just felt like that energy from the song. Hello. And
Reese is being very vigorous. Reese, hey.
Yeah, as soon as I heard like the demo version of it, I was like 100% like this has to be the first song or the intro track, or like this is just, it just made me feel something. And Ricky had created that demo and he had done like all like the little vocalizing of like, I don't know, it's like boom when the bass drops. Like he said, like that's all him like doing it. That wasn't anything that I came up with. And he was just like, oh, you could like replace that with whatever you want. And I was like, no,
you're good.
that's sick. Like so
sometimes the scratch track stays in. You know what I mean?
And I use that as inspiration for like the meaning behind the song, or just like the overall vibe that I'm going for. So I do even just like the demo titles sometimes like influence me, and it gives me like something to start with.
Let's talk about the vibe that you're going for. And I feel like that's a good jumping off point because there's a lot conceptually and narratively going on this record. And having now had you kind of explain what was happening in real life with the people in the band, I can kind of see some parallels going on with this narrative construction that you put together. So you described the band, or at least in the press release that I read, it was described as cyber pop metalcore, which I think is pretty apt. And there's a lot of like futurism and kind of like cybernetics and cyberpunk and all that sort of stuff feeding into a lot of the visuals of the band, the music videos, the album cover, all that sort of stuff. But narratively, there is like a story element going on that kind of threads between the different songs. So let's talk about that. Where did that come from? How did you flesh it out? Was that something that you're responsible for? Was that a collective thing with the other guys in the band?
Yeah, it was mainly came out of the lyrics.
Okay.
So I didn't finish writing all of the lyrics to the EP, like in that one writing retreat. Don't get me wrong, there was like a song written outside of that, which kind of like strung everything together. But I am such a fan of having like an overarching theme, overarching narrative. And at the time that we were writing this EP, I guess I don't know, the world felt very dystopian almost. And it felt, I would normally describe myself as like a very positive, optimistic person who sees like a lot of light in the world. But at the time, I was definitely going through like a bit of an existential crisis, and I feel like I still am. So I was seeing, you know, a lot of negativity in the world, and I guess just like having this human experience. And the only way I can really describe like how I was feeling was like I wasn't depressed. Like I was very, you know, I was very like content almost with where I was. But at the same time, I wouldn't have been opposed to being abducted by aliens.
If there was like a big red like exit button, you're like, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'll see what another planet's like right now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was at. And that it was more like an imagery and more of I guess, an idea that kind of started to make its way into the tracks.
Yeah.
And every track has its own separate meaning, but then when we put them in order and when I started refining the lyrics and tweaking them a bit, and especially when we wrote the song Requiem, which is our recent single and the title track from this EP, writing that song was very intentional in stringing together this overarching theme. So all of the songs were written individually. then I began to see a slight theme emerging and thinking about what I wanted to say. And then I made tweaks along the way and then wrote Requiem, which ties everything together in like this nice bow.
Yeah, that's fascinating because I do think Requiem is like the standout track from the collection. At least to me, it's the one that I enjoy the most out of the EP. But it does seem to have like kind of like the cornerstone lyrical kind of content that does kind of like tie it all together. So I find that really interesting. Were the other guys in the band involved in that kind of narrative stuff, or are they kind of like happy to just let you do your thing when it comes to the lyrical stuff?
Look, they're happy just doing their thing. I kind of think that they're just like, okay, Monica, like go off and do what you want to do, and then I'll present them with an idea and they'll just be cool with it, which is really nice. I like to tell them about the songs like as I'm writing them. Sometimes I don't feel comfortable straight away. There's definitely been songs where I haven't really told them exactly what it's about till after it's come out or before it's come out. So yeah, they definitely let me do the thing, but then when I started to have this like emerging theme, I began to like share it a little bit more and kind of get their vibe on it, and thankfully they're just like super supportive of whatever I want to write about, and I think it just fits in well with like the aesthetic and the kind of like vibe that we're overall going for.
Yeah, so with that aesthetic, were there any kind of like outside influences that you were maybe turning to like consciously or even subconsciously to kind of influence that thought process and then kind of like the overall aesthetic stuff? Because I could think of a number of different things, but I mean, I'm interested to know, like, was there anything that you were like watching or reading or anything that kind of like helped you kind of draw out those narrative threads?
Oh gosh, I can't remember if there was anything specific that I was watching and reading, but I guess, I don't know, I think we're seeing similar vibes come out in a lot of different bands. And especially the way that the music industry has evolved, it does feel like this bit of kind of like this apocalyptic vibe is quite like prevalent. And I just think that that's reflective of where society is at this time. So I don't think that there was anything specific that I was like reading or watching or listening to. I think that this sound just fit for whatever reason with us as musicians.
I think that probably works and kind of makes sense to me too, because like with the particular sound of the band, you know, it's very heavy. You are leaning into a lot of like nu metal and industrial kind of like soundscapes and textures. So with that kind of inherent darkness and heaviness, this kind of lyrical output just kind of makes sense. Like you could kind of swing it the other way and have like super bright, fun lyrics with a super dark vibe and go for contrast. But I think leaning into it definitely makes sense. And the material in Requiem is all the better for it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we're always going to lean into that darkness as a band. I think that that's just instinctively like what we're all drawn to. You know, there's certain genres like pop punk that I don't resonate with at all because to me, it's like too happy. Like that's not why I listen to music. I'm drawn to the darkness and the more like alternative side. But yeah, a lot of that industrial sort of like darkness was definitely driven by the guys and what they were writing, like definitely Ricky and his like gothic industrial influences. Ben as well, like he's very much like me, like definitely drawn to like the more obscure. He's such a nu metal kid as well. So I think like the music is always going to be, that's why I don't know if I could ever be a solo artist per se, because I'm so influenced by the people that I'm creating music with and having this like overall like mission and thing together.
I mean, I think that's cool. Like particularly a band is like a collective thing, right? Like it is meant to be this like shared catharsis with a bunch of different individuals. So if you're drawing energy and like creative energy specifically from other people, then that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Not everyone has to have a solo project, you know? Like that's fine.
My hardened heart, it buries me with no regret, like submarine. When rivers feel like cyanide, the earth is just too heavy when I'm awakening.
Let's talk about the collabs on the record. So you've got two. One of them is they're both singles, right?
Yes.
Yes. Talk to me about the first one, Dan from Alt. How did that come about?
Yeah. So we've been
And that's for Requiem, right?
for Requiem,
Yes.
yeah. So we've known Dan for a while. We've played a bunch of shows with Alt in the past, and I believe that feature was like the last feature. It was one of the last like vocal parts added to the EP,
Right.
and there was a time that we thought, oh, I'll just do a normal second verse, but having someone else's voice in there, specifically when the meaning of the song and this like duality between I'm singing from like Mother Nature's perspective and
Yep.
Dan singing from the perspective of the earth, and it's kind of like a love song.
Okay.
Well, disguised as a love song. It's about a toxic relationship, but it's actually about toxic relationship between humans and the earth.
Beautiful.
I don't know. I just wanted a voice.
We love layers.
Yeah,
we love
yeah.
layers.
I just wanted a voice that would like kind of contrast with mine.
Yeah.
That would just add something. Yeah, just add something for the listener and add something to the meaning of the song. And I think that that's exactly what we got. And Dan was like the first person that we thought would have like, would be able to really enhance the song in that way. And thankfully he really liked it. And it's funny, I was messaging him and he was like drunk out at a game, some sporting game. And he was like, all right, like I'll listen to it later. I've had a few drinks. And he's like, no, tell me about the meaning behind the song, because obviously it's super important to him. And I was like, oh yeah, like he hadn't even listened to it at this point in time. And so I was like, I gave him a little bit of a spiel, pretty similar to the spiel I just gave. It's a love song between like the earth and humans, and talks a lot about, global crisis and and he was like, okay, send me the lyrics. And I was like, okay. So I sent him the lyrics. I didn't even think, again, I'm pretty sure he's still at this sporting game at this point. Hadn't even heard the song. Sent him the lyrics and I was like, I gave him some just like scratch lyrics ideas for the second verse. And he was like, I'm literally writing a song like right now, like yesterday. I was working on a song about this exact same topic, and some of the lyrics, the scratch lyrics that I given for this second chorus were very, very similar. Some of the words were exactly the same as the song that he'd been working on the day prior. So we were both kind of like, whoa. And I think he was like convinced before he even heard the track. But of course, once he heard the track, that kind of sealed the deal. And he was like, yep, I'm on board.
Yeah, that's a very like synchronistic kind of thing to just kind of like, it must have been fate. Like the universe wanted it to happen. That was a collab that needed to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
What were your thoughts after he lays down his vocals, Chris does his work, and everything's kind of mixed? When you hear it back and you've got someone else on the song in that kind of narrative, being that other voice that you're kind of speaking to in like a pseudo love song kind of way. What was your first impression?
I mean, I loved it. Like, I think that it's really humbling as an artist having another artist, especially alt, who are a lot bigger than us, to, be a part of the work that you're creating. I think that that's always super humbling. And I just think that having his voice on there, like the song would not be the same without it, especially given the fact that that subject matter does mean a lot to him. And yeah, I just think it enhanced the track so much. Like it would just not be the same song without it.
Yeah, I was talking about this with the guys from Gravemind when they came on the show a couple of months back, because they have a couple of big guest features on their latest record. And we were talking about how sometimes you listen to music and you can tell that the feature is very much just like a kind of pay for play type thing, where they were like, who's the biggest name that we can get to get on this track and do this bit, and we'll put them in the TV and the music video and that sort of thing, and like
classic.
And like that's fine if that's what you want to do, but there is a difference when the person who's coming in to feature for a track is involved at that level. So like to have Dan like read through your lyrics and to resonate with them personally due to his own music, that creates like a deeper kind of connection, I think. And you're right, like it's so ingrained into the song and what makes Requiem so good that like you couldn't just lift his part out. And I think if you were to do his part, it would still be great, but not as great because he enhances it. He accentuates what's going on in the track.
Yeah, 100%. And he ended up modifying my lyrics quite significantly and writing that part himself. I think there's like a couple of things that he kept, but for the most part, like that verse is his. And I just think that that's even better. Like whenever I ask like a feature artist to participate, I want them to feel ownership over that part.
Totally,
I feel like the audience can kind of hear that. And there's, I hate that, like, you know, when you can hear that a part's just been like tacked on or lifted on. Like I like to have like some sonic things going on which kind of like ease it in, ease it out, and make it feel like more cohesive rather than just like a copy paste thing.
I completely agree. Let's talk about the other collab, which is The Nihilist. The artist is Rivalent. I am not familiar with them, so educate me. Who are they?
So another one where we were like, oh, it might be too hard to get a feature because actually I think it was our producer who had the idea of like that part having a rap over it.
Okay.
I took a little while to come around to that idea because I got demo-itis where I was so used to hearing the demo without any vocals in that section. Yeah. And, you know, that leads into like, it was such a short section that leads into like this really cool guitar solo and like poor Ben, like he doesn't get any guitar solos. This is like, this is his moment. And I didn't really want anything to overshadow that. And so I couldn't see it. And again, like we asked Riv like pretty last minute, but yeah, it was definitely Chris that we were just throwing around like ideas. Like we thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool to get like Jani? I don't know if you know that electronic artist Jani. She's really cool, like kind of like dark trap electronic artist.
Oh, she toured with Health recently.
Oh, yeah. And I think she opened for Limp Bizkit, if I'm not mistaken, too.
Yeah, right.
So we're like, oh yeah, someone like that. And then time kind of got away from us a little bit. And then Chris just threw up Rivalent's name because he had worked with another one of his artists. He's like, oh, ask this guy. He's like a he's a producer. So he can like record really easily and like he's really fast at working. And we're like, hey, like let's listen to some songs. And yeah, we heard a couple of his tracks and they definitely, whilst they were electronic, they definitely had the dark vibe to it. And we're like, yeah, like let's see if
this will work.
Let's see what he does. Like, because I couldn't hear it. And then we just sent him the track and I was like, you know, here's the space that we want the feature. Do what you will. Here's what the song's about. And it was another track where having his parts on there enhanced the song so significantly in terms of it really brought like this narrative together. And without like his lyrics and contribution, again, the song just wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I want to go back to demo-itis though, because that's just like barreling around my head now. How do you overcome that? If you're working on a project over a period of, you know, months, potentially a year or longer, how do you overcome that instinctive response to be like, it started this way and like you can't really see the final product because it is that iterative process? How do you kind of, I guess, like let yourself embrace the change that goes in pieces to get to the final point?
Yeah, I mean, you got to leave your ego at the door whenever you step into a rehearsal room. Like, there's been so many times where, like, my soul has just been crushed. No, I'm just kidding. Sort of. But I think that comes down to having a good producer, honestly, because I feel like a big part of a producer's role is, like I said before, to get you out of the comfort zone because it is very easy as a musician to get stuck in your comfort zone, and especially as a vocalist, there's certain melodies which are going to feel natural to you, certain song structures which are going to feel instinctive to you. But if you just stick to what you know and sometimes what you like and everything, then you just end up writing a bunch of songs that sound the same. So I think like overcoming that demo-itis is having a good producer to really just kick you up the butt when you're kind of like stuck in your comfort zone.
Yeah. Is Chris particularly like supportive and kind of like gentle, or is he a little bit of tough love sometimes?
Yeah, it's all tough love, but I actually really like that. It took me a while to get used to that because, you know, your songs are like your babies and, you know,
Got to kill your darlings, you know?
yeah, like
Yeah.
that old saying. But I really appreciate people that are honest in my life in general, because you need that to keep pushing and keep getting better and better.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, when you present something that he thinks is really good, that's really nice, because I know that he's telling the truth. He's not just like blowing smoke up my ass or something.
Yeah, and I feel like that's probably one of the like essential traits of being a producer. Like when you have that more hands-on role in the creative process, in the writing process, arrangements and composition and all that sort of stuff, like you have to be able to kind of be honest and be like, this is working, this is not working. And that's ultimately kind of what you're paying them to do. Like if they're just going to be there and be like, that's great, everything's great, so good, you're like, nah, I feel like we're not really getting the best mileage out of this. Like we want someone who's really going to like push us and we can get the best out of it through that relationship.
For sure.
Before we move on from the EP, I just wanted to talk about the closer, Venus Retrograde. I think it's fantastic, and I might just kind of like be a little vulnerable here, but like your vocals are incredible.
Thank you.
And I feel like you really kind of pushed yourself on that track, and I can hear the work, I guess, that you've done vocally on that track. Is that a special one for you on the EP?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's not the hardest for me to sing technically, but it's the hardest emotionally.
Okay.
And it's like, even just like thinking about the track kind of like gets me emotional. And so I hope that translates. I mean, it's a song about,
it definitely does. Yeah.
yeah, it's a song about separation, and it's the kind of song that I love to listen to. Like it has this big crescendo at the end, and kind of has this feeling of, I don't know, a lot of a lot of different feelings, but yeah, it builds to this like crescendo, and I love songs that like have this big like kick in moment
Yeah.
with all the guitars and the drums, and like that really make you feel something. And I think that the way the song's structured just enhances like the lyrics and the meaning behind the tracks. So
Yeah.
it's definitely left of field for us. I don't think we've ever written a song like this, but that's why I'm so excited about it.
Yeah. I feel like the title track, you know, Requiem is like the most kind of immediate in terms of like catchiness and hooks. Venus Retrograde is like the best compositionally, I think. Like it just like it is quite stunning. And I always love any project, regardless of length, like an album or an EP. Like for me, like there's a knack to making like the perfect closer, you know what I mean? And really kind of summing up what's the journey that you've been going on as a listener. And I think like the Venus Retrograde comes off as very intentional to me in what the whole band is doing, but what you're doing lyrically and vocally.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to shout that out. It's a fantastic track. I can't wait to see it live.
Yeah, we've been doing it live like the past couple of shows and
Okay.
kind of like testing that out. And we have this like moment in our set where our last few shows we've been handing out glow sticks.
Beautiful.
And so like getting the crowd, getting the glow sticks, which definitely ties into, again, Ricky's rave influence.
Excellent.
So we had the glow sticks.
We
but
love
then,
props. Props are great.
then there's been some shows where we've played the Nihilist like directly after, which is like such a whole
Contrast,
opposite of that
yeah.
song. But then looking out into the crowd and then like seeing everyone go like from the glow sticks, like waving, like all emotional, and me like crying on stage. And then all of a sudden like the Nihilist kicks in, and then it's just like a rave, and everyone's still got the glow sticks, but just like getting their
Sick.
fists in the air. So I was like, this is a more seamless transition than I thought it would be.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You planned it all along.
All you wanted was a little piece, like you're entitled to me. And you speak so confidently, going round in circles. Funny how you think you're so poetic, but you're loud and just pathetic. All with your pants down talking smack. What you calling me? We're fighting back. There's no symmetry.
Let's talk about the future. So you've got a bunch of stuff coming up. We obviously mentioned that the EP is coming out next week for people watching this, but October 23rd. And then what do you have planned after that? got a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, we do. So we're doing official launch shows in Melbourne and Sydney just for this EP. So we've got Melbourne on the 8th of November at the Workers Club.
Yep.
And then we will be playing Sydney the following week on the 15th at the Bergy.
Beautiful. I will put the poster up right now, which is what people are probably looking at, and I'll put links in the description to suss all of that out. But please go on.
Yeah. We've got our friends Auratech supporting us on both shows.
Nice.
We could then be up in Sydney, Hereafter and Priorities in Melbourne. So the lineup is all of our friends, to be honest,
Perfect.
which I think like makes for a really cool dynamic when you're going to a show as a punter. Like I remember going to shows. I'm diverging here, but
Please, this is a podcast. That's what you're supposed to do.
I went to so many shows like when I was really, really young, like seeing like the Amity Affliction and D's Nuts, and I knew that they were mates, and that made it all the more special. Like as a punter, being a part of that.
It's very like kind of feeds this like voyeuristic thing where you get to like be an insider or like an outsider. Now insider into like someone else's crew. You know what I mean? Like when you know that they're all mates and they're all hanging out, but then you're also there just kind of hanging out with them.
You're like
it's
a part of the gang.
Yeah. It feeds like the parasocial voyeuristic thing that everyone kind of has.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. So I'm really looking forward to that because it's just a nice environment. Like sometimes headline shows can be a little bit more pressure than support shows. I mean, not sometimes, they always are a lot more pressure because you're the one bringing the people through the door and you're the one orchestrating it all. So to have a bunch of our mates on these shows is going to be really, really nice. I'm so excited. And then speaking of mates, we are going on tour with our mates in Future Static in
Friends of the
January.
show. Yes, very excited for that.
We're all going to be in a van going around Australia. We'll be going to Canberra for the first time. We've never played there. We'll be playing Adelaide. We've played there a couple of times before, but we've never, they've been for festivals, so we've never played like a club show there. So I feel like that's going to be really, really cool to go back in that setting.
We had Amariah from Future Static on the show months ago now, but I remember her saying that she felt bad about the band not having done a headline tour in a while.
Yeah.
And she was like, I feel really bad because we like keep going to Europe and we keep like doing all these we keep doing all these international shows. She's like, and we've put out this record and we still haven't done like a headline tour. So I like knew that it was something that they were working on. So when I saw the poster and I saw you guys on it, I was like, that's a perfect fit. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And I think another one that's going to be like a cool lineup because Rin Rin are on there and we're all mates with Rin Rin, and I played a lot of shows with Rin before. So I think it's just going to be good vibes. Like anyone going to those shows is in for a really good night. Yeah.
And I would be remiss if we didn't mention the listening party for the EP. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so we decided to have a little intimate listening party. I've got a mate's bar in Fitzroy North, and it has a cinema in the bar. So we thought, how cool would it be to have a listening party there and then have all the music videos up on the screen?
That's sick.
And then, it's just like a 30-seat cinema, so it's still like, it's not like a big cinema or anything.
But that's like intimate and kind of cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I always, ever since he bought it like a year ago, I was like, definitely going to have the listening party there. So it's kind of been, I've wanted to do that since before the EP was written, I think.
You wrote the EP to have the listening party.
Yeah, I mean, you got to create the life that you want, right? So yeah, we've just invited, the first invites honestly just went out to friends of ours and friends in a lot of bands, but we always had the intention of opening up invites to just anyone who wanted to come and just celebrate this milestone with us, which we did yesterday. So yeah, on our socials, people that said that they wanted to go, we DM'd them the link because it's a small bar. We can't have a million people going.
Sure.
So we do have a certain allotment of entry. But yeah, I think that's going to be really cool.
Sounds super fun.
Yeah, just to like hang out and celebrate this milestone, because sometimes when you're in the music industry and you've been in it for so long, and you'd probably like feel the same maybe like as a podcaster, it's kind of like work. You're always striving like, hey, what's the like biggest guest I can have? Or like, what's this, all of these, achievements, and constantly like working towards that. And then we so very rarely sit and stop and acknowledge how far we've come.
Yeah.
So that was really the intention behind this listening party. We're not performing. We're just simply
hanging
there
out
to hang out and have some drinks.
Yeah.
But my intention at least, and I can probably speak for the whole band as well, is really to just have that pause, this moment of, okay, this is a body of work that we've created. We've worked really, really hard to put it out independently, and there's been a lot of moving parts to it. Like, let's enjoy. Let's just, have some good vibes.
Yeah, and I think you're right. There is this tendency to kind of always be looking for, the the next thing, the next show, the next release, the next guest, whatever it may be. And we so very rarely stop and just kind of like take stock of like the wins and the losses and the learnings. Like, I feel like life is so crazy and busy all the time that like you very rarely get a chance to just stop and just kind of like reflect. And I think a listening party is a perfect opportunity for you to do that creatively, but also to like let people in to that kind of vulnerability a little bit and kind of like, celebrate it with us, because it's a collective thing, right? Like you wouldn't be where you are without the fans, without the people supporting you, without all of the moving parts that go into making the Last Martyr what it is. So I think that's a really, really cool thing. And I can't believe there's a bar with a cinema. That's crazy.
I know.
That's such a great idea.
They do cocktails and tacos and oysters. I don't know. It's like all the good stuff rolled into one. So
that's so sick. I'm going to have to talk to you afterwards and
I'll send you the link. I'll send you the invite.
Okay, we'll get some details about that. To wrap things up, Monica, I have one final question for you. I know that we just talked about like constantly looking forward to the next thing, and I'm going to get you to do that right now. So what are your goals for 2025? What do you want to do personally? What would you like to achieve with the band, holistically, everything?
Yeah, I think what I want to do personally is exactly the same as what I want to do with the band and what collectively we want to do, which is achieve one of our biggest goals of touring overseas.
Okay.
So we have not done that as yet, but it's definitely on the list of things to do. And I feel like, I don't know, I mean, I could get there and like, be in Europe or America or wherever we end up and not kind of like take it all in and be like, okay, what's next? I probably will. But at this point, I feel like achieving that would be so significant for me because that is what I set out to do when I joined this band. And I know that the guys, it's really high on their bucket list, their priority list as well. So that would be amazing if next year we could do that. Okay,
cool. I will. I'll circle back to you in the DMs when this happens, and I'll be like, "You got to take stock. Got to take the win."
Yeah. Remember,
here you are.
It wouldn't be a listening party. Maybe when I buy the overseas tickets or come back, we'll have a
going away party.
Going away party. There we go.
There you go. Perfect. We got there. Requiem is out on October 23rd. I will put links in the description for people to pre-order, stream. There's vinyl for the EP, is that right? I think I saw some of that.
Yeah.
Vinyl looks super pretty. I love that.
Yeah, red on red. It's classy.
I will put links for all that good stuff in the show description for people to check out. Monica, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
This was awesome.
It was great.
Subscribe now to the Pitch of Discontent Patreon to receive access to extended cuts of our bonus episodes, as well as exclusive behind-the-scenes content, monthly Patreon-only episodes, member-only votes, the TPD community chat, and much more. Go now to patreon.com/TPDpod and join for as little as $5 a month. That link again is patreon.com/TPDpod. Thanks for watching the show.